Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk about printing and assembling this gal here, and you'll see basically the models that I used, how I chopped it up, getting it on the slicer, cleaning, printing, painting, getting it all prepped and assembled. And it's just kind of a brief one, but I thought it might be interesting for you guys to see. Hope you enjoy it.
So here's the digital model, and you can see over here I've broken it into several pieces. So if we look, here's the head and the torso. Under here you can see I've got my little key for it to fit in, and then one section of the tail that's got the other part of the key, female part of the key on the back, the tip of the tail, and the base. And actually what I did was I decided to print it with the tail attached to the base. So that's what I sent to print for that. I could have keyed that and made it separate, but wanted to try to save a step. So the other thing to notice is with the tail here, I just did a straight cut with a key on both of those. For the head, I did something a little different where I created a boolean shape to cut out the neck, and then also separated out the back, or I should say booleaned the back. So this has got a little sort of round over area under here, and these three contact points, the shoulders and the butt. And I did not do a key on this because I knew that if you look here, the neck kind of curves over the front, and if I had a key in there, it might have made it real difficult to plug in. So I just was guessing and relying on the fact that when this sort of sets in, it'll hold its place and I can register it with those notches. And what I used to cut the body was this guy that I have here. It's basically truncated pyramid with an extremely thin thickness to this slab. And so what I was able to do, if I come over here and I'll append this guy back in, I just take this, rotate and scale it into position. Let me just turn on transparency so I can see it, and fit it as best I can in there so that it's not sticking through. The other thing about this part is that the inside cone is smaller than the outside. In other words, there's sort of a wall thickness there, a little bit of a gap, because you don't want to make these exactly the same size or it'll never go back together. So that's a little tool I use there for cutting those things apart. So I decimated them and sent them off to print, and I'll show you what that looks like, how I oriented them. Here's the head in Lychee Slicer. I just tried to orient it so that the face was up and would get the least amount of support problems. On the printer I have, it's not the greatest. It's a Frozen Sonic Mini 8K. It does a decent job, but the underside gets a little funky, so this detail under here did not turn out so great. But I tried to avoid landing on some of these details by moving the supports a little bit to the outside of it. Here's the body, similar thing. Decided to try to orient it with the good side facing up, and it printed pretty well. But there was, as you see later, there's a lot of artifacts. Somehow it doesn't really print perfectly. There was a misalignment from the top and bottom of this tail. I think moving forward I would slice it differently. I would probably cut it right under here, or even just the sort of stomach line itself and the hands separate, and try to create that tail in one piece. I thought I could get a better clean fill on this seam line, but it's been giving me trouble. But it's good enough, and that's what I ended up doing for this guy. So when I redo this, I'll probably separate the body out from the rest of the tail. And here's the tail. This was kind of my determining factor. This was probably the biggest piece I had. And so I oriented it this way. Again, I would have maybe done it a different orientation if I had a bigger print bed, but I decided to put the sort of away from Hero's side, like this side here is the better side. So I tilted that up. Yeah, again, in the end, probably what I'll do next time is attach the entire tail to that all the way up to the hips and separate it. I'll probably cut this back part of the tail off because it'll probably be too big, and separate this guy out. That'll save me that extra cleaning in the middle here, which was kind of a bad choice, but it is what it is, and I'll learn for the next one. And finally, here's the tail. Obviously trying to orient it so that the visible side is up, and there we go. So I went and printed it, and we'll see what that looks like. So I decided to redo this for the next time. So I went in and essentially broke these into 4 different parts now. So we've got the head, which is basically the same as before. Then we've got the torso with the little key in here. We've got the tail, which has got its cutouts. Also a couple little bullion notches for where the hands connect. And then I put a female key down here to go into the base, which is this guy. And I did a very specific thing, and hopefully this will work. Notice how I've got this key angled back. So this tips back and is kind of creates what would you think would be an undercut. But the thought here is to tip it back like this so that when I put this tail on here, hopefully this little cantilever back will keep it from tipping forward while I'm testing fitting it and dry fitting it before I glue. Obviously when I glue it, it's not going to go anywhere, but the thought here is just to keep it from tipping forward, because obviously it's extremely front heavy and would want to flip off the base. So we'll see if that works. There's no real other undercuts. There's just a little bit of a cutout you can see for where the tail meets into the base there. So in theory, it should just be able to kind of slide in at an angle, hopefully. That's the plan. I'm going to try to see if I can print this with this entire tail section in one shot. Not sure if I can, but that's probably going to be my determining factor of what fits on my printer. Hopefully I could get a bigger printer one day and not have to worry about this being a small piece, relatively speaking. But anyway, that's my current setup now. This is not what I'm finally going to finish. That was the other thing, but I learned from it. Normally I would be able to cut these things right in the middle and sand and clean it, but for some reason my materials have been acting up. Maybe they're reaching their shelf life or something else. But anyway, that's how I'm going to do it when I print it next time. Hopefully I'll be able to show you that on a different video.
So here we see the parts. Now I printed this guy in 1, 2, 3 parts. I already put it together off camera, but what I wanted to show you is I had to do some filling here. The parts didn't fit quite well. My printer's not the best quality, so sometimes there's distortion and I have to fill it. I use this stuff, Epoxy Sculpt 2-part putty, cures over time and thins with water, which is really great. But the thing I wanted to show you here, there was a real big gap between these 2 parts, and you can see like there was a definite dip, and filled it, let it cure, and sanded it. The real key is just to make sure you get a good smooth transition and you don't leave a lot on here. It should really just feather right in. Same thing over here. There was a bit of a distortion on the print, and you can see that's still a little bit lumpy right there. So I'm going to need to continue to sand that to blend it in. I normally would put keys in here, like a little truncated pyramid type thing to fit. But because I knew that the neck has to kind of go in and down, I didn't want to have a key to potentially give me trouble. So I just made sure I had 3 little contact points for the body, the shoulders, and the butt here. And so what I do is just kind of slip this over the neck and down. And then I could feel where it locks into place. When you do print these things, these are all the little bumps and things from the supports. I'm going to have to sand those down and clean up this. You can see also on the underside when it's printing where the supports are, it also, in my printer, creates a little bit of wavy mess. I also had a bit of a build problem right there that I started to work on and sand. Still need to clean that up and everything else. And then I'll glue it together. So let's get that going. Here we have a first pass. It's pretty clean. You can still see some evidence of that line. So I'm going to use this red cap to fill that, but the form is good. Got that pretty well set. And also, you know, normally I'll use like 80 grit sandpaper or 150 to get the finer. But I also use files like these jeweler's files. These are kind of my 3 go-to files here. And they're just great for getting to areas that I can't with the sandpaper. Also, if you get one of these guys, it might look different than this, but it's basically for cleaning the gunk out of the grooves. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with the spot putty and sand it out finally, and then we should be good to go for assembly. So I've got the red cap on now. This is the stuff I use. It's by Bondo. You can get similar stuff. It's a glazing putty or spot putty for auto stuff, and you squeeze it out of the tube and just spread it on really thin. It'll air dry, and then you can sand it. Try not to do it too thick. You want to just get it on as thin as possible. You can see right here I was filling a hole. See how it's dark? It's still not dry. It'll take a little longer for that to kick, and then I'll coat it again. But you want to just sand this down. I'll use like a 120 or something grit to sand this down, and all you want to see are just whatever scratches are there. Like the only red you should see is the little scratches or the little areas you wanted filled. You want to get rid of basically all of it. So I got that. I have a little bit here. So I'm going to sand these, and I'll show it to you before I prime it. So I'm going to get to doing that. All right, so here we are sanded. You can see that like the only stuff left is what's in the scratches and a little bit of fill. That's what it should look like. I also wet sanded this, used, you know, like a 220 with water. Just dip the paper in some water while you sand. It gives a smoother result. You can also see here that this is still kind of dipped in, this hole that I filled. That's because that material shrinks. So I'm going to come back and fill it one more time and then prime it. Same here. You can see the only stuff you want left is what's in the holes or in the scratches. So I'll prime this up and we'll assemble. Patch that hole there. And I did go back and do some more work on this, but you can still see that seam. I don't know what happened here. Maybe the materials are weird, because you see it's like gone over here, but I'm just going to call it good for now. So we're going to go ahead and glue this. Again, I'm going to use the this Loctite gel that I like.